Hey everyone, it's Movie Lover Warren 20 here, and I'm here with a brand new movie. I'm here with episode 10 of my Halloween horror movie reviews. And this episode is going to be we are going back into the 2000s, and we are going into the town of Barrow, Alaska, where it has a curse every winter, or once a month. The town, every day, is nighttime for 30 days, or aka 1 month. And another problem, it attracts a clan of vampires. Yes, we are going into the vampire genre out in the cold mountains of Alaska for 2007's one of the most underappreciated vampire movies of all time, 30 Days of Night. One of my favorite vampire movies of all time. I have no idea why anybody does not talk about this. No one seems to remember this a lot. This is one of the most underrated horror movies of all time, and probably one of the best horror movies of the 2000s. This is kind of like somewhat of an action horror movie. It's actually based off a graphic novel by Dark Horse Comics, the same publishers behind Hellboy. And so, yeah. So, anyway, what is this movie about? This is a story of an isolated Alaskan town that is plunged into darkness for a month each year when the sun sinks below the horizon. As the last rays of light fade, the town is attacked by a bloodthirsty gang of vampires who speak their own language, bent on an uninterrupted orgy of destruction. Only the small town's husband and wife, sheriff, who are actually kind of going through a bit of relationship troubles, team up with a few survivors to try and survive the certain destruction that's about to happen and face off all the vampires. Now, like I said, I think this is one of my favorite vampire movies of all time. It's got a pretty stellar cast, such as the film stars Josh Hartnett from Halloween H20, 20 years later, Melissa George from the Amityville Horror remake, Danny Huston, Ben Foster, who, by the way, guys, is from Alpha Dog, Mark Bone Jr., and is directed by David Slade and produced by Sam Raimi, aka the man behind the Evil Dead trilogy. And for his company Ghost House Pictures, which is an okay studio. They make some good movies like this movie, Drag Me to Hell, Evil Dead remake, and the two Don't Breathe movies. And this movie, of course. And they've also made quite a number of bad movies like the Boogeyman films, The Messengers, the Grudge franchise. The first one's okay, but Grudge 2, 3, 2020 suck ass. Well, that's all I think that's all I can really think of. They're an okay studio. They're better than Blumhouse, I'll give them that much. But anyway, of course, like I've said, still one of my favorite vampire movies, and here's why. Because this film grabs you from its opening shot of a man walking through a desolate snow-covered landscape away from an ominous boat docked in the ice that never lets go. Director David Slade, the man who directed Hard Candy, wisely avoids many of the seizure-inducing trappings of any of the recent horror films that came out during this film's time. Sure, there are the periquisite quick cuts and intimate scenes of carnage, but there are also haunting wide angle shots and one extra stage bird's eye view crane shot when the vampires first begin dragging people out of the houses into the streets, while successfully adopting some of the great imagery from the graphic novel. Slade is fully aware that this is still a film that shies away from CGI and overstudies fighting and effects that would detract from the sense of realism necessary in a far-fetched horror film such as this. Yeah. The cast is also pretty good too. I love Josh Hartnett as the Sheriff Eben, and Melissa George as the ex-wife Stella. They have some pretty good chemistry. They're actually going through some relationship troubles when we first meet them, but they slowly do start to warm up to each other, and they do have some pretty good chemistry together. And then there's Evan's brother Jake, who's also a pretty good character, and Ben Foster, despite the little screen time he has, actually does give a pretty chilling performance as the stranger that warns them that the vampires are coming, and Like, he actually gives a pretty chilling, intimidating performance, I think. I think he's one of the most underrated actors out there. Like, seriously, should be getting more roles. And Danny Houston is the main vampire. I forget the main vampire's name, but he's also really good. He's probably the best of the vampire characters. Like, he's actually very, you can actually fear. These vampires are not like sparkly, the dumb sparkly ones like in Twilight. No, they're actually like bloodthirsty killers you can actually be terrified of. You know, these vampires do not play nice with their victims. They will find and kill just about anybody in that town that can satisfy their thirst. And like, you just really want to get away from them fast if you are in that town. Like, aside from being better directed and better acted, they are run out of the mill horror flick. 30 Days of Night is also fantastically gory. There's some pretty good gory moments, like decapitation at the Sonatos will especially rejoice. Like, decapitation fans, like, it's refreshing too. It's the way it takes its gore and action dead seriously. There's no silly one-liners or graphic sight gags. The characters are deeply affected by what they witness and what they have to do to survive. This is pure horror, and it's like very relentless. And I do love this final fight. Like, spoilers, guys, around like near the end of the movie, Evan takes this like vampire blood and turns himself to a vampire, knowing it's the only way he can stop all the vampires for good is to become one himself and face down Danny Houston's vampire. Like, and then him and Danny Houston have this brutal showdown. It's very epic to watch, and I just really enjoy every minute of this fight. Like especially like when he kills that head vampire, just bashes his fist through the vampire's skull, killing him for good. And it just scares off all the other vampires around, because it's the very end of the month and the light is coming back, and the vampires have no other choice but to pretty much retreat. Any of the remaining ones, so yeah. But unfortunately, this does mean Eben is now going to die. So him and Stella share one little sad moment together when they watch the sun rise until Eben burns to death, and all Stella can do is just look onto the sky in rage, and it just cuts away perfectly, and the credits roll. I don't think it's another better way to end the movie right there. So I like that. Unfortunately, there is a problem. Yeah, like there are some missteps with the film's pacing, some huge leaps of logic in the amount of time that passes between events. And now it did have like a prequel web series called, I forget what it was called, but there was a prequel web series called, but yeah, like set before the movie. They aired, I think, on FearNet, or which is a nice little setup for this movie. And then there was one that took place right after this as well, with the same characters from the prequel miniseries, which also not really that good per se. And then there was a really bad sequel, direct-to-DVD sequel called 30 Days of Night, Dark Days, which features the same characters from this film, features Stella from this movie, except played by a different actress. Because I think I read that Melissa George refused to reprise her role in this movie. Like, the production of Dark Days just shows. Like, that sequel is just pitiful garbage. I would avoid the hell out of that movie if I were you. I would only just really watch this film. This is the only one to watch, really. I would avoid the rest. Avoid the two miniseries, and you can watch the miniseries if you can, but they'd be a little hard to find, but avoid Dark Days. Like, that movie is just bargain bin trash. Not even the same cast, different crew, just direct-to-DVD crap quality. It's all this. But anyway, the thing that did scare me the most about this film is the vampires. I mean, you won't want one of them coming to your room at night at all, but overall, in the end, very good and worth watching. So yeah, you're a vampire movie fan, you want to see a gory vampire movie, give this movie a watch. It's worth it. I mean, is it as good as films like The Lost Boys? Well, no, The Lost Boys is still the best vampire movie of all time, but this would have to be second place. Until then, here's how I'm going to rank 30 Days of Night.
I am going to give 30 Days of Night an 8 out of 10.
And there we go. And that's it for this week's Halloween horror movie reviews. We've made it through 10 episodes so far. We made it through 2 weeks of season 2. So, What's going to be the horror film that's going to kick off next week's Halloween horror movie review episodes? Well, this one is going to be a zombie movie. Yes, we are still going to be in the 2000s to kick off next week. However, we're going to be in the early 2000s instead of the mid or late 2000s. And this is not a George A. Romero movie. No. This horror movie, zombie movie, is directed by Danny Boyle, the man who did films like Slumdog Millionaire, Trainspotting, so forth. This film is basically set in London and has zombies that run, and stars Batman Begins as the Scarecrow, Cillian Murphy. Yes, guys, if you're guessing 28 Days Later, that is going to be the next episode, and I cannot wait to finally talk about that movie. Yeah, but until then, that'll be it for this episode. Thank y'all for watching, and if you like this and want to see more, then don't forget to like, subscribe to Movie Lover 120.